In this lesson, we'll learn how we can start to add bump maps into our Softimage materials. Okay, so as we've seen in our previous lessons, we've now got the texture maps that have been assigned to the various parts of our aircraft. Now, one of the things you'll probably notice as we start to come in and render this is the fact that our materials look very, very flat. So if I were to press and hold the Q key on my keyboard and draw out a render region, we can see that, again, we have this nice texture, but overall there's really no depth to it. Again, it looks very, very flat, where we really should have some raised details as well as recessed details around these rivets and around these seams. So that's really where these bump maps come in. They're a way of adding this sort of depth information without actually having to model that into the actual geometry. So to do this, let's go ahead and just start by opening up our Material Manager. So once again, press Ctrl 7 on our keyboard to quickly open this up. Let's go into the material that we want to add our bump map into. In our case, it's going to be this airplane body. Now let's go ahead and just expand this. I'll try to give myself a little bit more room to work here. And what I want to do is take my preset manager and start by opening that up. So it's going to be this little arrow button right in here. Now this is where we can actually come in and start to add all kinds of nodes and additional functionality to our shader network here. Now what I want to do is go into the bump section, go ahead and click on that, and now we can start to see our different bump nodes that we can start to add in here. In my case, I'm going to start with this bump generator. So to add this in, just simply click and drag it into my workspace. Now at this point, it's going to function very similar to our image. So all I need to do is just double click on my bump generator, and now I can actually plug in the file that I want to use. So I'm going to go to New from File, and again it's going to look inside my Pictures directory, so I'll choose my ship bump, go ahead and click on that, and you can see now that has been connected. So what I need to do now is take this bump generator and actually make that part of my shading network, because you can see even though it's in this workspace, it's actually not connected to anything. So to make a connection within our shading networks, just grab this port. In my case, it's going to be this yellow colored port, but it may be different colors for different nodes. And now we just simply click on that, and now drag it onto the node that we want to connect to. In my case, I'm going to drag it all the way up and over to this sort of a peach or salmon colored node. So go ahead and let off of that, and we're going to connect it in as the bump map of this airplane body. So just to give myself a little bit more room to work, I'll just double click on that to collapse it. And now, again, press and hold the Q key on my keyboard, draw out my render region. And you can see, if you look very, very closely, I'll go ahead and just bump up the quality on this. You should now start to see some of these little raised details starting to appear. Although you'll notice that they really don't match up to the rivets on our texture map, or our color map here. And the reason for this is, if you recall from one of our earlier lessons, if I go back and select this airplane body, if you recall, we had taken this airplane texture, and in the Advanced tab we had set its number of repeats to 2 by 2 by 2. So we need to make sure that we do the exact same thing for this bump generator to make sure that it fits. So let's double click on the bump generator. Again, go to Advanced, and set its repeats to 2 by 2 by 2. Okay, and again, I'll just double click on this bar up here to collapse. Okay, very nice. So what we should see, again, I'll just try to get in a little bit closer so we can actually see what we're looking at here. Now we can actually start to see some of this detail that is being raised up. Now in my case, it's sort of a subtle effect, but it is definitely there. So you can really start to see, again, where some of these details start to appear. Now, again, if I wanted to go back and make some adjustments, just go back to my material, back to the bump generator itself, and double click on that. So within this bump generator, if I go over into the texture node, there's really only one slider that we really need to be concerned about, and that is this factor. So the factor really controls the overall strength of this raised bump effect. Now, at the moment, this bump effect really sort of appears inverted from what I want. Instead of having these black areas appear to be raised up and these rivets appearing to be pushed down, instead I'd want the opposite effect. So to do that, all I would have to do is take my factor and set that to a negative value. So in my case, I'll set it from +5 to something like -5. And once that recomputes, now we can start to see something that is much more along the lines of what we would actually want. So these seams now appear to be pushed down, where these little rivets now appear to be raised up. And the real beauty of this is the fact that all of these maps that we start to plug in from this point forward, things like the bump map, you'll notice that we don't have to go all the way through this UV layout process that we did in our previous couple of lessons. So any new maps that we start to add on will obey all of the existing UV layout that we've already done. So if I needed this bump effect to be a little bit stronger or a little bit softer, I could maybe take this up to a value closer to 0 if I wanted this to be a little bit softer, and you can see that really starts to soften out. But if I wanted this to be even stronger, I could start to increase that negative value, and now you can start to see that it becomes really strong. In this case now it's almost too strong, to the point where it now actually becomes sort of difficult to see. So typically I find for most situations the default value tends to work pretty well. So somewhere between 5 and -5 I find works really well for most situations. And really this bump mapping just works in a very simple way. So I could actually zoom in on this image itself to see what we have. So really when it comes to working with a bump map, we have just basic grayscale information. So everywhere from white to gray all the way up to black. So different values of black or values closer to black can now appear to be pushed down. Values closer to white can appear to be raised up, and different gradations of gray can start to give us slightly softer raised or lowered areas. So really just a very simple way of using black and white color information from this texture to determine how high or how low an area needs to be raised up in the bump map. So that's a very quick look at how we can start to take these bump mapping effects and very quickly incorporate these into our Softimage shading networks.